Welcome to the I Empower podcast, where stories become art and art becomes important reminders. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. All of the inspiration is then memorialized into a single unique painting that reminds us to be great. So if you, my friend, are looking to step out of your own way and into your life's full and well-deserved potential, this is the place for you.
Kids remember the way that we make them feel. And if you can remember that, like, okay, well, for the most part, I show up with kindness with my kids. I show up with respect. That is going to outweigh those moments where we lose it and then we have to come back and apologize because we, like them, are humans as well.
So, Destini, thank you so much for being on today. I just want to say that it's literally taking like every fiber of strength in me to not like squill in excitement to get to talk to you. I think you're amazing. I want to tell like my listeners and viewers where I initially found you at. I'm sure some of you guys even know who she is. She's a pretty big deal. I found you on TikTok a few months ago. One of your like super informative videos like came through my feed and I was like, what is this? And then I like clicked on you and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to follow her. She's dropping knowledge like all the time. So that is where I found you from. So I'm going to have you like introduce yourself, tell everybody like who you are and what it is that you do. And I just can't wait to hear.
Thanks, Jessica. I always say that TikTok is like, you don't even need PR now with social media. Like everybody just finds you on TikTok. So I'm glad that you found me and I'm glad that we're having this conversation today. So I am Destini. I am a TikTok parenting influencer. I live on the positive side of TikTok and I just share information, tips, advice about getting more connected with your kids, having more peace in your household, and just navigating through the whole parenting journey.
That's so awesome. So where did this come from? Is this something that you were brought up like, or did you just make that decision when you became a parent that, I'm going to do things differently? Like, where did all of this come from? How do you do the things that you do and know the things that you know?
No, I definitely didn't grow up in the kind of household that I'm parenting in, like many of us. I grew up in a wonderful home and I have wonderful parents, but we definitely parent differently. And so it just came from my background in psychology, and I've worked with kids in some degree or another all my life. And so just seeing how practically you have to shift and adjust yourself in order to change the environment. I've been in plenty of different environments with kids, and I've recognized very quickly that a lot of times it's not the kids that are really running the show. So I have just studied a ton. I'm always reading. I've done parent coaching. I've been coached, and I've been in therapy and just all these things and these resources that I've gotten that have made a difference in my home. So I just wanted to share them with a greater community.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Like, so you have 2 children, is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
And so when you're like new mom and I know that we all kind of go through like that complete like lifestyle change, and it's very easy for us to get frustrated even with newborns and infants. Like we find ourselves getting frustrated and then we just react. I'm not really sure like how to explain why we react the way that we do. I know I personally find myself, getting frustrated. I have an 8-month-old, so I find myself getting frustrated sometimes. And my husband, he reminds me of you. And so like, he's very like, she's not malicious, she just doesn't know how to communicate. And so what was that like for you as a new mom? And like, when, did you start off that way with having the background in psychology, or did you just like wake up one day and say, okay, like I have got to do this differently for my own sanity and for, the well-being of my child. I want my child to grow up and be a well-rounded individual. So tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with my first child, I had a ton of support, a ton of help. I had my mom's help. And so a lot of the experiences that I now help my community with, I didn't necessarily experience. So when I had my second daughter, my mom passed away. And so I didn't have that same support system. And I was experiencing all of those things. Like I wanted to yell and I wanted to be frustrated. And I knew like something in me just felt like this isn't how I want to parent, but I wasn't necessarily sure how to go about that. And so that's what really started like my educational journey in terms of being more intentional in my parenting.
That's so amazing that like you realized that like you wanted to be a difference with your children. And you think that so it's so funny that like these things pop up in my news feed when I'm like preparing myself to talk to you. Like someone had posted on Facebook the other day, like new moms and then moms back then, and it like listed off these like I can't even, I wish I would have like pulled it up and read it, but like it was like, finishing your dinner. Like one of the like new moms was like, it's okay if you don't finish all your dinner, you can still have dessert. And the other one's like, you're gonna eat what I cooked, or you're not gonna eat
Yep.
anything at all. And it's like, I see those differences, and then of course everyone's like, I'm the old mom, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I'm like, you're these little children, like we're just gonna have like we need to have better adults. And I think that
Yeah.
definitely starts with how the children are raised, because then that cycle usually will just continue itself. And I know that like I find myself feeling the same way that like my mom did an amazing job raising me. She was a single parent, but we always like to tell people that we're yellers, and like she yelled at us when we were in trouble or when we didn't listen. And I find myself doing the same thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't want to do that, but it's hard, because I have a 9-year-old too. I forgot to mention that. So like, and we're in that pre-pubescent age that
Yeah, mine is
yes.
now just
And so like having
jumping
to
out.
do that. So how do you combat those types of that type of energy? Because I'm sure you have a massive following on your TikTok, and a very huge following, very large following on Instagram as well. Do you get like negative feedback on these, and people are just like, are you crazy? Like you can't do that. You have to be stern. You got to whip your kids. You got to do this and that. Like how does that play into like what you're trying to do, and like trying not to, you know, take in that negativity?
Well, in the beginning, I definitely did get a lot of negativity when I was learning who my audience is. But now I think the understanding is I'm coming from a place of empathy. So I'm never like telling somebody that they're doing something wrong. I just more specifically like to speak to the people that are where I was at when my child was doing things and I didn't have any other tools because I didn't grow up, parented the way that I'm trying to parent. So I just want to help those people, and I try to focus on those
Yeah.
people. Like I'm yelling, but it doesn't feel
Right.
right, or I'm spanking, but I wish that I wasn't, because I know that a lot of times that doesn't come from like that. That's not, if they had another go-to, they would use another go-to. But a lot of us are just either in survival mode or overworked and tired, and just a lot of these tools do take time to implement. And so I get the frustration of wanting to do better but not necessarily being sure, and I like to focus on those people.
Right. Everybody else
Everybody else,
is
I'm
like,
like, all right, I guess,
I'm not listening to you.
you're not my
Yeah, get
audience.
out of here.
Yeah.
I know, like I like that you said that. And I think that one of the videos that you posted recently, I actually think I seen it on Instagram, was basically like coming to the situation with an empty cup, I guess is the best way to explain it, where you are exhausted, you haven't taken any time for yourself. And like, so it's like trying to, like, I'll let you explain it better because I'm going to like misquote you, but oh my gosh, like I just, like when you posted that and I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do some things for myself. Like I need to recharge myself so that I can be the best person for my children when those events happen. And even when like they're not being bad, just like, in general, like normal day-to-day life, like how to navigate through that. So I'll let you explain that.
Well, I feel like parenting is difficult. And anytime we're doing something that's difficult, there are certain ways that we can make it easier, and there's certain ways that we make it harder. And I feel like a lot of the tips that I give are not easy to access in the moment if you're not taking care of yourself outside of the moment. And so that's basically what I was just saying, is that if your cup is completely empty, it's so much easier to just do what you've been conditioned to do. And if you saw yelling growing up, or if you were yelled at, that's what you're conditioned to. And so it's hard to stop that response when you're overworked or you're tired or you don't enjoy your life. It's just you go into that auto response. And so I think that that's why it's important with parenting that you start with yourself, and with, finding that peace with yourself, or Just not being overly stressed. Parenting is stressful enough, and if you're bringing stress to it, it makes it so much harder to parent respectfully.
That's like some amazing advice right there, guys. Like just taking time for yourself, I think, is probably one of the hardest and one of the most important things that we can do as parents. Um, what do you think the benefits are of having this type of gentle parenting? I know that it's like a new movement that's kind of, sweeping. I don't know if it's just our generation or the younger gen. Like I don't really know where it came from. I just all of a sudden I'm starting to see especially on TikTok, and I talk about TikTok a lot on here because I just think it's a great social media platform for people to use it as therapy or use it as ways to just communicate and get their message out. So you have a psychology background. So how important do you think it is to have this sort of upbringing and parenting and I don't really know if I want to say rules, but like just all around environment for children? Like, how do you think that plays for us as adults when we get older? Like the importance of the compassion and the empathy, and like, do you think that it leads? I feel like I've heard that gentle parenting can lead to less like um, issues, like psychological issues as adults. I guess is where I'm trying to say that. The word sociopath comes to mind, and I don't know why that's like coming up to me, but like I don't know. You just hear about like the way that children are brought up, if they're that they're more likely to have issues like that when they're older. Like, how do you think that this plays
Impact.
into that?
Well, yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, the traumas that we experience as kids definitely negatively impact us when we're older. And I think that for me, it's not even necessarily about an end goal, so to speak. I would love for my kids to be, happy, healthy,
Yeah.
productive adults. But at the same time, what's most important to me is the role that I'm playing in their life. I know a lot of us go into parenting like assuming the child is going to complete
Right.
us. And they complete this picture for us, and I have to have kids. Everything is about us. I want a girl,
Yeah.
or I'm going to raise them this way. And I think that what I try to keep in the forefront of my mind is that in the present, I feel like I'm here for her. I brought her here, both of my kids, I brought them here, and I'm here to guide and help them. And I know that I can't be an effective guide to them if we don't have a good relationship. And so I always come back to our relationship because kids have to feel safe enough to make mistakes. They have to feel safe enough to come to us. And I think sometimes we do things that are counterproductive to that mission. We want to raise kids that follow the rules and that are respectful, but at the same time, they don't have the space to learn how to do that because when they make a mistake, they know, well, don't make it in front of mommy or don't make it in front
Yeah.
of daddy because it's trouble. But they need us, so they need to have that safe space. Otherwise, the other 9-year olds are helping them with their mistakes, and that's a
Yeah.
mess.
Definitely. Do you think that that's so funny that you said that because that's true, and that brings me like to my question that popped up while you were saying that. I know I've heard a lot of people say when you have children that they're an addition to your family and that like your world doesn't revolve around them, and so like they have to learn how to fit into your lifestyle instead of you fitting theirs and like making everything. But I mean, what you're saying, like, and I think that is a key thing that people need to realize is that these children are so vulnerable and they need that guidance. Like, they
Yeah.
need that positive, problem solving, and I think you've said it before, if they're met with, you know, anger or frustration every time something, they need your help, then they're going to stop coming to you for that help. And that's where they're going to start seeking out from other areas that are not so good or just trying to do it on their own and like, making it worse.
Yeah. That was
Oh my
me.
goodness. So I think that like, you know, parenting is probably one of the toughest conversations that you can have with people. Everyone gets super in their feelings about it, I guess is the proper word to use.
Well, because we put so much pressure on the roles.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
So we we take it serious, but to the extent that we feel like they're a reflection of us, which is so like toxic and damaging to the child because that's a lot of pressure on them. But then also, it's a lot of pressure on us because we're not the only impact and influence in a child's life.
Right.
So we're responsible and we should take it serious. But at the same time, if I am looking at my child as an extension of myself, then I'm totally missing the point that they're their own separate entity that came here not to fulfill something for me.
Yes, I love that. I think that's so important too for people to realize that, like, and I always say that I'm a new I'm a newbie gentle parenting. I don't really know like the proper terminology for it, but I'm a newbie and I'm trying really hard. Like I said, I have a 9-year-old, and the way that I was raised, I found myself doing similar things with her. And then when I met my husband, he's a very gentle person in general. And there's multiple times that you'll have to say, like, Jessica, like, you know, take a breather, like, and then there's been times where I've had to apologize to my child, which is extremely hard as an adult because we like to think that we don't make mistakes. And
Yeah.
and like I think it brings it up and like makes you realize, if I'm making my child apologize for things that they need to apologize for, or making them understand that they should probably want to do that on their own after they've like
Right.
sat down and thought about the things that happened and that sort of thing. But like imagining like how hard it is for me as an adult to apologize to a child, like that child's got to feel the same way apologizing to a parent. And so, yeah, I just think that I think what you're doing is amazing. And so you've created this like community on your TikTok, and you're coaching now, right? That's it.
I
Tell me
am.
about that, because I know that there's so many resources that it can get super overwhelming. I know myself, like we're trying to do like Montessori with my littlest one, and I know that kind of plays into the gentle parenting like genre. And so tell me about your program that you are offering for people, because like I said, it can be overwhelming, and if you have that guide, it just makes life so much more easier.
Yeah. So I actually started my Patreon, and basically I do daily Q&As in there. So people send me questions and I answer them because it was just getting so
Yeah.
overwhelming answering questions on social media. So that's basically where I do my Q&As. I've also started my actual coaching program so that I can start taking people like one-on-one. I'm so excited about that. Because I have some really good conversations with the parents in the community, and it's just really helpful to have that support from other people that are like, okay, but what would I do in this
Yes.
moment, or what would you do in this moment? And so that's what we do up there. It's really fun. And then it's somewhere where I can share other resources like books or things that I'm learning and growing through. And it's just an easier place for me to package all of that information.
I love
I can share everything.
that. Yes, and of course I'm going to link all of her information below so that you guys can check that out. But like I think, you talk about that community, especially when it's new to us. It's something that we don't know anything about. Having that support system to bounce ideas. And like, you can read these books, and like you said, you can be like, oh, well, what about like what happens when this situation happens, or how do I handle that? Like I can think of a million things like right off the top of my head. Like, Destini, how would you like how would you do that? So having that ability to have that communication with you is huge. So yeah, I'm really excited about that for you. That's amazing. How do you think that that's, we talk about stress as parents, and, dealing with, when you open up that avenue, like even just responses on TikTok or Instagram and questions, like how do you feel like as a parent and as a person that you're going to take that in? Like, do you think that like self-care and like daily routines is super important for yourself so that other people can kind of like, get some information on that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's also energizing for me to have other parents to talk to. So it hasn't gotten to the point where it's like, okay, this is stressful, this is too much.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's what I was meant to do. I feel very on purpose, and I'm very passionate about it. So it's not draining to me in
That's
the least
awesome.
bit. If it was, I wouldn't be
Right,
doing it.
yeah. Well, I'm sure too, like your education probably has helped prepare you for that too, and know how to navigate through that. That's amazing. I just want to give you like air high fives. That you're doing an amazing job. Like,
Thank you.
I follow all of your stuff, and I'm like, I can like, TikTok, you can get lost in that like very
You can get lost.
quickly. So it's like I have to set aside like 15 minutes a day to like look through Destiny's stuff so I can try to like so if you guys haven't checked out her social medias yet, like I highly recommend it, but definitely set out some use that as your self-care your self-care
Right.
time to like educate yourself. So with the how old are your children? Do you mind telling me? You have a 9.
Yeah, I have a 3-year-old daughter named Phoenix, and then Kennedy just turned
That's
9.
the beautiful children. And you actually co-parent one of your children,
I
is that
do.
right? I
No, both
Both
of
of
them.
them.
Both of
How
them.
is how does
Yes.
that go for you? I know I co-parent with my 9-year old. So she goes to her dad's for a week, and then she comes here for a week. And so
Yeah, that's what we do as well.
it's we find that difficult sometimes because the structure of her home over there is vastly different than what it is over here. So how do you navigate through that? Like what's your advice on doing that? Do you speak with the father, or how does that work for you?
Well, they both have two different dads, so it's even more complicated
Gotcha.
because not only are they away from me for a
Yeah.
week, but they're like essentially only children for a
Oh
whole week.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't have to share. They don't have to, deal with being annoyed. They don't have to
Yeah.
do any of those things. And so it's not just me rebuilding connection with them, but they have to rebuild connection with each other when they
Oh
come
my
back. So
goodness.
yeah. And then I also have to deal with two different personalities and two different co-parenting styles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get a lot of
Do you have
experience
like a do you
with
have
a
like a
lot of
do they come
things.
back on the same day and you have like a
Yeah.
decompress we're just gonna decompress today, guys, so that we can
Sometimes, well, during the year, like my oldest comes back first, and so that is really helpful because I can have some solo time with her. Because she's used to being an only child. She was only child for
yeah.
5 years, so she needs that
Yeah.
one time a lot more than the toddler does. But now, yes, they come back on the same day, and it's something. I just roll with the punches,
Yeah.
honestly, it because they're humans, and sometimes they come back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're all best friends. This is great. And then sometimes they come back, and I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh.
it's not our week. This is not our week, I guess. Um,
Oop.
but they're mostly home with me, and so we do have time to rebuild that connection. But I'm sure you've experienced this where you're like, okay, everything's finally back to
Yes.
normal, but it's Thursday
Right.
and they're about to leave.
Yeah, I know we used to joke.
Back the day before they
Yeah,
leave.
exactly. We
Yeah.
used to joke that it would take like 3 days to get back onto like our schedule, like our normal what's expected over here, and then like you said, they turn around and they're at the other house, and it's like a whole like like I don't want to call it vicious, but it's a cycle that like goes on.
But it goes back to empathy because I'm like, this has to be a lot for a kid.
Yeah.
Everything is completely different. And so I get that and I understand that. And when we empathize out loud, I think that our kids put their guard down. Instead of me just saying it in my head, I'm like, girl, look, I know you've been gone all week. It's all good. This is probably a lot right now. What do you need? You need a second? You want to play? What do you want to do? And I think her hearing that, she's like, okay, mom's on my side. Yes, I have an attitude right now, but she's not mad at me. She's not returning that energy. So maybe I can, bring it down a
Yeah.
little bit.
That's awesome. Like, and I think, for me in that situation, I think, so when my daughter goes to her father's, she has two older sisters, like way older. So like 20 and then I think right at 18. So, which, um, she's 9. So like they've had that relationship for a while. But it's going over there and then coming over here. And for a long time, she was the only child over here until we just had the baby. And so, but, now when we introduced the little one, I have to remind myself sometimes that like she's probably feeling a lot of things right now, Like she's used to mom being, I get all the attention. So, and
Right.
I think like you said, it's important that we realize that our children, they're just human, and they're little humans that don't really know how to express how they feel or how to even handle a lot of those emotions. And then just taking a step back, like you said, and being like, okay, what do you need? Do we need to like cuddle in the bed and watch some TV? Like, do you want to go on a walk? Like, just finding those
Yeah.
things to help reiterate that you're there for them. Like,
Yeah, for
I think
sure.
that's fantastic. Fantastic
And we,
advice.
I think we have to remember too, and this is probably what has been the biggest help for me, is that I have background in developmental psychology. And so I got to study a lot on how our brain works. And I think just that
Yeah.
alone, taking a look into that as a parent helps so much, because I think sometimes we expect more from our kids than their brain's capacity
Yes. I'm so
really
glad you said
allows.
that.
And especially with a child. I mean, I know, you have a 9-year-old, but I know that when my daughter was 5 is when I had my second daughter. And parts of her brain literally is telling her, like, there's not enough. There's not enough
Yeah.
mommy, and we still have that caveman sort of brain wiring where, it's
Mm-hmm.
survival, and kids feel that, and they feel the anxiety of that the same way that an adult would, but they don't have the life experience to be able to articulate it and communicate it in a way where it feels like, a kid's not going to say, mommy, I just need some mommy
Yeah.
time, and you've been with the baby all day. They're not going to be able to say
Yeah.
that, so they're going to act it out in tantrums, or in not being able to sleep anymore, or having random little attitudes, or not wanting to eat their food. And so I think it's important for us to remember, again, they're humans, and that comes with a whole lot of brain activity that we probably don't even
We're
understand.
still struggling with that.
So we probably shouldn't expect so much from the small
Oh my
person.
gosh, yes. I know like some of those, I don't know all of, again, this is new to me, so I'm like still learning, but like the whole like decision making and like cognitive, I don't know, like I don't want to,
That's frontal
yeah,
lobe.
like that doesn't develop until,
Mine's still
okay.
developing.
Right. So like
So
these children, they don't think and process that the way that we do. We don't think and process to our fullest potential, and then you take a child and like it's like a tiny little tiny fraction. And I think we just have to sometimes, like you said, like just take a step back and realize that they're not doing it because they want to, really. Like they don't know
yeah,
how to express. And one of the things that you were saying, like when you were talking about acting out, like for a lot of kids, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, no, bad attention is still attention. So, that
hmm
they're finding the ways. If you're on, if you find yourself on your phone and they're like, I want to play with mom. And like, so they're going to act out, or, acting out in school because maybe they're not getting the things that they need at home. Um, and I think nobody really wants to know or think that they're doing a bad job as a parent. And sometimes we feel like our hands are just so full, and that, like that it's not us that's causing these problems, but there's definitely some rooted situations there that need to, like, we just need to realize that, like you said, the children they're just kids. They're little kids.
They're just kids, and that's why when you said earlier, they're like, my world doesn't revolve around kids, and we do have to set up the environment for their developmental age. And I think that half of our discipline comes from not doing that. I was talking to my friend yesterday, and she was saying that, um, her nephew's mom was upset with him because he ran out in the middle of the street, and so they popped his hand, and I'm just like, toddlers they've never seen someone get hit by a car. They have
No.
no idea what happens if they run out in the middle of the street. We don't have to use fear in those moments. We should probably just be a little more
Yeah.
proactive. Why is the toddler in the street to
How
begin
did
with?
your toddler get out there?
Yeah, stuff like that is our
Hmm.
responsibility. It really is. And what happens is we use fear, and we take away that curiosity that kids naturally have. That's why we have outlet plugs and stuff like
Yeah.
that. They eventually need to learn how to use that. We can't just completely,
Yeah.
just not, but at that age, we need to take our own precautions as adults. It's not a 2-year-old's fault that they stuck their finger in the outlet.
Right, they're just curious, like, "What's this do?"
Exactly, and curiosity is a good thing. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I think that that's important too, and that's probably one of my most difficult things that I struggle with when I look into, like, Montessori and things in that type of thing is encouraging your children, but not encouraging them so much that they feel like they have, like it's pressure on them. You know, like you're
Hmm.
doing like good job, but then also it's like to combat that, like we're not supposed to, say like be careful, don't do that, or this is that. Is that like you have to let them, you know, learn what things are dangerous and what things are not. Obviously within within a scope of like not letting your kid run out into the street, of course, but or stick
Right.
their finger in a light socket. But um yeah, like that's the thing is I think that a lot of people just, myself included, we just want to protect them physically.
Yep.
But at the same time, we don't realize that we're not mentally preparing them for the future or, mentally
Exactly.
protecting them. Which brings me to another question. I know we talk a lot about trauma, like childhood traumas and things like that, with our guests who have experienced that. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the ways that we speak to our children and treat our children in a aggressive manner, that actually can lead to trauma induced issues later on in life.
Hmm.
What's your take on that?
I think that we all process traumas differently, and wherever our fall short areas are in our parenting, a lot of times that is where it comes from. And so I think the only way that you don't parent in a trauma led way is if you make yourself aware of those traumas and how they're impacting you as a parent, and it's different for all of us. I got yelled at as a kid. My household had spanking. I don't yell. I think I maybe yelled once, and I'm gonna say once just because it sounds
Right.
like I had to. I'm sure it happened.
So just
I
to
can't
make
remember
sure,
it though.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I didn't personally internalize my traumas in that way, but there are other ways that my trauma shows up in my parenting. And so it's just really about being proactive and being intentional. I always say if you're the kind of person that even has a desire to be intentional, then you're already doing a
Right.
great job, because so many people are out here like just blindly like, no, I'm great. I'm doing a great job. And I think it's those of us that know that we
Yeah.
have stuff to work on, that our kids are
Yeah.
cool. They're good. They should be good. I think they'll
They're
be all
gonna
right.
be okay. We're gonna get through this. I know because like
Yes.
I've talked to people before who like you say being intentional with the words that you use and the way that you speak with your children. And a lot of times we don't realize that those things can that we will it'll stick into our heads and we'll remember them when we're older. Just trying to think of an
Mhm.
example of someone that I know off the top of my head, like maybe their father didn't really like the clothing choice that they were picking. Not that it was inappropriate or anything like that. They just didn't like the style that they were doing. And like they verbalized that to that child. Well, then that child carries that with them into adulthood. And then they are self conscious about, the way that they look out, on the outside and things like that. And so I think it's important, like you said, to be intentional and to think about the things that you say and what could be the repercussions later on in life. A lot of times those things don't show up until later, but we hold them in.
Yeah. Well, well, a quote that I heard a really long time ago that kind of sticks with me, because we can't get it right every single time. We're gonna say stuff that we didn't mean to say. We're gonna do things that we didn't mean to
Yeah.
do. But I heard a quote that says, "Kids don't remember what you say. They don't remember what you do. They remember how you make them feel." And I
Yes.
think that a lot of our memories about things and events and people in our childhood are tailored from the perspective of how those people made us feel overall. And so I know that there were plenty of things that my mom said when I was a kid that were just like, what? But but I don't see it through the lens of
Yeah.
that. And I have more positive experiences in my memory bank than I do negative
Yeah.
ones. And so I think that is because, again, kids remember the way that we make them feel. And if you can remember that, like, okay, well, for the most part, I show up with kindness with my kids, I show up with respect, that is going to outweigh those moments where we lose it and then we have to come back and apologize because we, like them, are humans as
Yeah,
well.
I'm so glad that you said that because I actually seen, I think it was a meme that someone had posted, and it was talking about spanking. And I know that that is a super hot topic when we talk about parenting choices and ways to discipline your children. A lot of people, I guess, I don't know where it came from, like how old it is, but well, actually, I do. But that like the meme was saying that the child's not going to remember what they got in trouble for when they got spanked, when they got their spanking. They remember the spanking. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember. Again, no shade on my mom, I love her, she listens to the podcast, but there was times when I remember going out and picking my own switch as a child, and like I remember that, but I don't remember what I
You grew up
did.
like me, girl.
Yeah.
That is
Oh my
punishment.
gosh. So people listening are probably gonna be like, what? So yeah, like
Yeah.
I remember picking my own switches multiple times. I have no idea what I did
Mhm.
to earn that punishment. And so, you know, I don't know necessarily feel like it traumatized me or that I might have some deep seated trauma from it. Who knows? But I remember that, and I think that that's so important that you said that. So like words are here and gone tomorrow, but like you remember that feeling. You remember how you were made
Yeah.
to feel, and that sticks around for a lifetime.
Well, our brains will literally restructure experiences to match our perception.
Wow.
We could literally add words to what somebody said because of the way that they overall made us
Oh
feel.
my gosh. Yeah. So it's like the like when a child's like telling a story and you're like, "Wait a minute, it didn't happen that way." And they're all like, "Yes, it did. 100% did." I'm like, "No, it didn't."
Yeah, exactly,
And I
exactly.
think that I think I've heard of that too. I know a lot of trauma victims, and that's one of the reasons why, like after an accident or a crime or something, they interview the people immediately to get that initial like memory of it, because as time goes on, our brains just, you know, they do these funky things, and then it, like you said, it molds it a different way. So
Exactly. And yeah, the punishment piece is, it has a lot to do with that because, like you said, they're not thinking about what they
yeah.
did when it comes to punishment. And that's why so many of us as adults, we may not necessarily be like egoic or cocky, but all of us are so self consumed and self
Yeah.
absorbed. It's the punishments and the rewards as kids because when you get a punishment, it's not about what you did. It's not about seeing what you did to the other person or having empathy. 100% of it gets focused on you. I'm bad. Oh my gosh, my mom's so unfair to me. I have to sit here in timeout. It's 100% you're
Yeah.
focused on you. You're not considering or understanding the behavior and why it wasn't okay. Punishments focus on the person, and I think that is really doing your child a disservice because they don't learn empathy through punishment. They don't learn cognitive problem solving through punishment. They just learn that they're
Yeah.
bad. Either they're bad or they can't trust you.
Right. And I think that that's like the key thing is the trust thing. I know that I've read up on as well, talking about the physical punishments, um, how it teaches us as children into adulthoods that that's how we deal with conflict, or that's when we're really, really angry, that using
Mhm.
physical violence, I mean, that's what it is. To solve that problem or to, you know, handle it. And I think that that's a lot of times, unfortunately, like causes issues in later in life. And, you know,
Yeah.
domestic violence could be, you know, linked to, I think, spanking. And, you know,
Well, absolutely. Those things are repeated. But even outside of that, because there's a lot of people that say, well, I turned out
yeah,
fine, or, I'm not a violent person. And if control and force were used to get you to behave a certain way, a lot of times people don't realize the way that they use control and manipulation in their adult lives, whether they're violent or
yeah,
not. I think a lot of our manipulation and control when people aren't doing the things that we want them to do comes from us being raised that way. So I mean, I don't like hit
Right.
people, but at the same time, I know that I have controlling tendencies. I know that I can be like, just completely look over what somebody else wants to
Yeah.
do and focus on me. And I think that that comes from being disempowered in that way and not seeing effective problem solving when there's conflict.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. It's like ultimately, I think I can speak for every parent when I say this. Like, we just want our children to be good people when they grow up. We want them to be better than what we were. So, like, in order for that to happen, we have to be the best versions of ourselves so that they can
Yep.
learn from that and experience that and then be better. And then that is a good cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
That's yes. So I have a few questions that I want to ask you that I like to ask all of my guests. So if you don't mind, we'll just jump right into that. If you could remember, how would you describe your ambitions as a child and how you saw yourself and what you were capable of as a person? It's a deep
Man,
one.
it is. As a child, I don't remember what I wanted to do. I know everybody around me said that I was going to be a lawyer.
Ah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That
I don't
strong
remember what I.
personality and like,
Yeah, that strong personality. I was very
yeah.
argumentative as a kid. I always wanted to be right. They were like, "Yeah, you're going to be
I could
here." So that was
see
my
though, like
childhood.
I could see how that personality and how you are as a child has helped you be who you are today. Like, you're very informative and you seem like a very strong person to me and very matter of fact and like
Yep,
tell it how it is, and that's a lot how a lawyer
very
and
blunt.
blunt, yeah, that's how a lot of lawyers are. So I could totally see that. What would you say has been your stickiest struggle through your journey of parenthood?
Co-parenting
Yeah,
for sure.
I can
Yeah,
definitely relate to that. And so if
I think
anybody is listening and you're wondering like how to handle that, navigate through that, like reach out to Destiny and get on her coaching program because I'm sure she is definitely going to give you some knowledge on that.
man, we've come a long way for
Yeah,
sure. So
she's like professional over here. Seriously,
at
guys.
this point,
Like I'm actually thinking about joining her Patreon because like I'm sure
yes.
I could
Oh,
use like I could sit and watch your videos all day, but like you said, having that one-on-one is you can't live without it sometimes. Let's see. So what was like did you have an aha moment like through your journey of like was there like a specific event that happened to you where you're like this is what I'm going to do and like this is how I'm going to raise my children, or did it just come naturally for you?
no, it didn't come naturally. Definitely my mom passing, like a week before she passed. And I'm so sorry, I don't mean to get all
No,
sad, but a
yeah.
week before she passed, she was talking to me and she was about to lose her job that she cared so much about. And she was just such a fabulous, strong woman. And she was so upset because I was like, you have all this free time now. Like, you're basically
Yeah.
retiring. And she was so
Oh.
sad because she was like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I don't know what I like. And it kind of hit me in that moment that my mom had given so much to us and she didn't give to herself as much as she gave to other people. And so it made sense of so many things in my childhood and so many pieces of disconnect. And I was like, not only do I want my children to get all the things that I got, but I also feel like I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself
Yes.
as well. And so I think that and then her being gone and not having as much support and me really having to put my big girl mom jeans on and figure it out were really like turning points for me that I wanted to be intentional about parenting, but I also wanted to be intentional about reparenting myself.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, that's amazing. And the fact that like your mother was there to help you realize that like you had that power inside of you all along. I just think that's amazing. So speaking of power, we like to talk about stepping into our own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How would you
Yeah.
think of, or how would you describe the power that you try to step into every day?
That is a good question. That's a good question. And so I just said this yesterday, and I'm going to say it again because it's probably my go to
Yeah.
phrase, and that is controlling what I can control. And I think that we all have creative energy, and sometimes we give that away by focusing on external events and what other people are doing, and just placing a lot of blame. So I don't know if you read The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
I haven't, but I'm going to add that. I'm like going to write that right now. Write that down.
Amazing. But in the book, he says everything isn't your fault, but everything is your responsibility. And I think that for me, stepping into my power is recognizing that I'm responsible for myself. I'm responsible for the world that, my world and what shows up in my life. And just being intentional about the choices and the decisions that I make and owning them. Because yeah, I gotta control what I can control.
I love that. Oh my gosh, let me like put that on my mirror every day and just realize that. Oh my gosh, like I said, over here, just so powerful. I love it. Last two questions for you, and these are like my favorite ones. What's the best piece of advice that anybody has ever given you?
Oh man,
I know you probably have like a
I'm gonna
Rolodex of it
go.
in your head, and you're like, oh, which
I
one?
do, I do. But there's one thing that my mom always used to say, and she just would say, "One bite at a time, or one day at a time, or one step at a time."
Yes.
And so just, which I'm sure she didn't know it then, but she was profoundly saying to stay present,
Yeah.
focus on the moment. And so that's my
That's like,
for sure.
that's so like, that is amazing. And I'm going to take that with me after our talk and just stay present. And I know that there's a lot of times that I find myself already telling myself that, but it just gives me the extra energy to really like take that and use that in my life. I know a lot of times like being a busy working mom and like your kids, here with you at the lunch table and you're on your phone or your answer messages. And I just have to tell myself like, be present. Like, I'm just going to set it down. It can wait. So like, great advice. And so my last question, what is the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who is in the thick of your struggle if you had a few moments with them?
Wow. That you can't get it wrong. You can't mess it up. You can't. You can't
I
mess
love
it up.
it.
Enjoy it.
Awesome.
You're getting it right.
You're doing amazing. Keep going. So awesome. Destini, I want to thank you so much on behalf of our team and every single person that heard your story and connected with it. After the podcast, I will head straight to my easel and create a painting that represents what I personally felt and saw from your incredible story. Yes! Yay! If anyone is interested in seeing that process, of course, you can follow us on Instagram. And if you feel personally connected with the story and you would like to purchase one of the limited edition prints, you can do so on my website. But again, all that will drop when Destini's episode drops. So yes, thank you so much for being on today. It's been an honor talking to you.
Thank you. This was awesome.
I want to thank my guests so much for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I'm going to link their social medias below so that you guys can give them a follow through their incredible journey. If you personally felt connected to the story and you would like to purchase one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it, you can do so on my website at jessicajames.com. That's JESCAJAYMES.com. Of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at I Am Power Club and like and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of